The darkness of the asteroid belt swallowed the horizon, a research vessel that looked more like a cobbled-together scientific platform than a warship. Captain Elena Rodriguez gripped the command chair, her augmented neural interface flickering with incoming sensor data. Around her, the bridge crew worked with the precision of a surgical team, each movement calculated, each glance laden with unspoken understanding. Dr. Marcus Chen, the ship's lead xenoarchaeologist, broke the tense silence. "Captain, these energy signatures don't match any known commercial or research configurations." His holographic display revealed a complex network of energy conduits hidden within a seemingly unremarkable cluster of asteroids. Rodriguez's combat training kicked in, a muscle memory from her Special Forces days that never truly faded. "Zoom in on Sector 7 Delta," she commanded. The hologram shifted, revealing a meticulously hidden installation that seemed to pulse with an unnatural, almost predatory energy. "Xenotech Weapons Depot," she whispered, more to herself than to the crew. The implications were immediate and terrifying. Galactic law strictly prohibited the development of certain weapon technologies, especially those that could destabilize entire star systems. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a powder keg that could ignite an interstellar conflict. Before anyone could respond, the ship's quantum detection systems screamed to life. Zorn stealth ships, masters of concealment, were materializing around them. Where most species would have frozen, the Horizon's crew transformed. "Tactical assessment," Rodriguez barked. Lieutenant Aisha O'Keek, her fingers dancing across quantum computational interfaces, responded with clinical precision. 3 Zorn Shadow-class destroyers. Estimated weapons capacity could turn this asteroid belt into a radioactive graveyard in under 3 minutes. Most research vessels would have immediately transmitted surrender protocols. Most captains would have prepared for capture or destruction. Elena Rodriguez was not most captains. "Prepare quantum entanglement drive," she ordered. It was an experimental system, barely tested, potentially more dangerous to the Horizon than to their enemies. Chen, the Zorn Confederation's Grand Arbiter, a towering crystalline being named Vornak, watched the recording of the Horizon's impossible escape with a mixture of fury and fascination. Holographic displays flickered around him, showing multiple angles of the human vessel's quantum maneuver, a technological impossibility that defied every known law of physics. "Humans," he spoke to the assembled Confederation Council, his voice a resonant vibration that could shatter weaker minds, "have become an unpredictable variable in our galactic equation." The council chamber was a marvel of alien architecture. A spherical room where gravity seemed to flow like liquid, and each council member represented a different species that had long ago surrendered individual ambition to collective control. All except humans. Ambassador Krultax, a methane-breathing diplomat from the Hydron Collective, clicked his mandibles in agreement. They must be evaluated, properly evaluated. What followed was not just a test, but a carefully constructed crucible designed to break the spirit of any species. The trials of Confederation were legendary, a series of challenges that had systematically proven the inadequacy of hundreds of civilizations. Each trial was a multi-layered nightmare that tested not just physical capabilities, but psychological resilience, technological innovation, and collective problem-solving. The first challenge would be the void survival scenario. Participants would be placed in a radiation-saturated environment with intentionally limited resources. Previous species had lasted mere hours. The Zorn expected humans to last minutes. On Earth, the selection process was brutal. It wasn't a military draft or a simple recruitment. It was a months-long gauntlet that drew participants from every conceivable background. Special Forces veterans competed alongside quantum physicists. Emergency room doctors fought for positions against deep-sea researchers and wilderness survival experts. Dr. Marcus Chen led the psychological evaluation team. "We're not just selecting individuals," he explained to the Planetary Selection Committee. "We're creating a living organism. A team that can breathe as one, think as one, survive as one." The final team looked nothing like a traditional military unit. There was Rodriguez, the combat-hardened captain. Aisha O'Keefe, the quantum computing specialist with a background in extreme environment research. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, a biomechanical engineer who had survived 3 previous near-death experiences. Elena Ramirez, a linguist with a photographic memory and training in psychological warfare. Marcus Chen himself, a psychologist who had spent years studying human survival under impossible conditions. They were deliberately chosen for their differences and their ability to complement each other. The Zorn broadcast the first trial to the entire galactic community. It was meant to be a public humiliation, a demonstration of human inadequacy. The challenge zone was a carefully constructed nightmare, a zero-gravity environment saturated with multiple forms of radiation, with artificial obstacles designed to induce maximum psychological stress. Most species would have approached this with military precision. The humans did something entirely unexpected. As they entered the challenge zone, Rodriguez looked at her team. "We're not here to prove anything to them," she said. "We're here to solve a problem together." Their approach was fluid, adaptive. Where other species would have rigid protocols, they improvised. When radiation levels spiked, they didn't just protect themselves. They modified their limited equipment, using scientific creativity that left the Zorn observers speechless. Nakamura converted a communication device into a radiation dispersal tool. O'Keefe used quantum entanglement principles to create localized protective fields. Ramirez analyzed the psychological design of the challenge itself, finding exploit points that the Zorn hadn't anticipated. Hours passed. Days. The galactic audience watched, first in amusement, then in growing disbelief. The humans weren't just surviving. They were thriving. In the observation chamber, Vornak's crystalline form began to vibrate with an emotion close to fear. This wasn't just another species taking a test. This was something else entirely. Humanity was rewriting the rules of survival. The preparation facility was nothing like a traditional military training ground. Located in the Atacama Desert, it was a hybrid research center, psychological workshop, and survival laboratory that defied every conventional approach to team preparation. Dr. Marcus Chen stood before the selected team, his presence radiating an intensity that belied his academic background. "What we're about to do," he began, "isn't about creating soldiers. It's about understanding the fundamental nature of human potential." The facility was a marvel of interdisciplinary design. Rooms transformed dynamically. Psychological monitoring systems tracked every minute physiological and mental response, and the environment itself was a living, breathing challenge generator. Each team member would be pushed beyond their known limits, not through brute force, but through intelligent, adaptive stress testing. Rodriguez recognized this was more than training. It was an exploration of human capability. Their first collective challenge seemed deceptively simple. A sealed environment with limited resources, constantly changing parameters, and a series of increasingly complex problems to solve. But the true test wasn't about individual brilliance. It was about collective adaptation. Aisha O'Keefe, the quantum computing specialist, initially struggled. Her analytical mind wanted systematic approaches, but the challenges required something more fluid. During one simulation, she found herself unable to solve a critical technical problem. Instead of frustration, something remarkable happened. Elena Ramirez, the linguistic expert, approached the problem from a completely different angle. She began discussing the problem's structure like a language, breaking down its components, revealing patterns O'Keefe had missed. They weren't just solving a technical challenge, they were creating a new way of thinking. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura observed their interaction with fascination. He had spent decades studying human problem-solving. But this was something else. The team wasn't just learning to work together. They were learning to think as a unified organism. Chen's psychological protocols were revolutionary. Traditional military training emphasized breaking individuals down to rebuild them. His approach was different. He wanted to amplify individual strengths while creating a collective consciousness. They studied historical human achievements, Not just military victories, but moments of extraordinary collective problem-solving. The Apollo moon landing. The Manhattan Project. Medical breakthroughs during global pandemics. Each example revealed a pattern. Humans achieved the impossible not through individual heroism, but through collaborative innovation. Physical training was equally unconventional. Instead of standard fitness regimens, they engaged in complex scenarios that required physical and mental adaptation. One day might involve navigating a simulated alien environment. The next, solving intricate technical problems while maintaining physical endurance. The Zorn observation teams, monitoring these preparations, grew increasingly confused. This wasn't training. This was something closer to organic system development. Rodriguez recognized the deeper strategy. They weren't just preparing for a test. They were redefining what preparation meant. During one particularly intense simulation, the team faced a scenario that would have broken most military units. Their communication systems were deliberately compromised. Resources were minimal. The environmental challenges were extreme. Instead of panic, they found a rhythm. O'Keefe's technical expertise, Ramirez's communication skills, Nakamura's engineering creativity, Rodriguez's strategic thinking, Chen's psychological insights. They weren't just a team. They were a living, breathing problem-solving machine. As the final preparation phase concluded, Chen looked at the team with a mixture of scientific curiosity and profound respect. "We're not just preparing for a test," he told them. "We're demonstrating a fundamental truth about human potential." The Zorn were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their technology. It was in their ability to transform challenge into opportunity. The first trial arena was a masterpiece of alien engineering, a vast, shape-shifting environment designed to break the human spirit. Massive holographic projectors created a landscape that constantly mutated, defying physical laws. Radiation levels fluctuated unpredictably. Gravity shifted without warning. Sensory inputs became unreliable, with visual and auditory hallucinations programmed to induce maximum psychological stress. Most species would have been paralyzed. The human team saw it as a puzzle. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood at the center of the team, her augmented neural interface filtering the environmental chaos. "Remember," she said, her voice calm despite the madness surrounding them, "we're not here to survive. We're here to understand." The Zorn observation team watched through multiple dimensional interfaces, their crystalline bodies vibrating with anticipation. They had designed this first trial to be a psychological crusher, a scenario that would systematically dismantle individual and collective resilience. The environment began its assault. Holographic threats materialized, nightmarish constructs that combined elements from each team member's deepest psychological profiles. For Aisha O'Keefe, quantum computational projections that challenged her understanding of reality. For Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, biomechanical horrors that tested the limits of human adaptability. Most fascinating was how they responded. Where other species would have fought individually, the humans moved as a collective organism. When gravitational shifts threatened to separate them, they developed impromptu communication methods. Alina Ramirez used linguistic pattern recognition to predict environmental changes. Dr. Marcus Chen analyzed the psychological structure of the challenge itself. "It's not about beating the system," Chen observed to Rodriguez. "It's about understanding its fundamental logic." Their first breakthrough came unexpectedly. Instead of resisting the hallucinatory elements, O'Keefe began to analyze them. She realized the projections weren't random. They were a complex information system, a type of communication disguised as a challenge. "These aren't just obstacles," she reported, her voice steady. "They're a language, a very complex, very aggressive language." The Zorn observers became increasingly agitated. This wasn't the response they expected. As hours turned into days, the human team didn't just survive. They began to manipulate the environment. Nakamura discovered ways to redirect energy flows. Ramirez found communication patterns in the seemingly chaotic projections. Rodriguez maintained the team's psychological cohesion. Dr. Chen's psychological monitoring showed something unprecedented. Instead of breaking down under stress, the team's collective resilience was actually increasing. Their neural synchronization grew more complex, more adaptive. The trial wasn't just a test of survival. It was becoming a dialogue. On the 13th day, when most species would have been reduced to psychological fragments, the human team did something entirely unexpected. They began to play with the environment. Not fight it, not survive it, play with it. Rodriguez turned to the observation systems, knowing the Zorn were watching. "We're not here to prove we can survive your challenges," her actions seemed to say. "We're here to show you how we transform them." The Zorn Confederation's Grand Arbiter Vornak felt something close to fear ripple through his crystalline consciousness. This wasn't just another species taking a test. This was humanity rewriting the fundamental rules of engagement. The technological improvisation challenge was designed to be an impossible test. The Zorn Confederation had carefully curated a set of resources that, by their calculations, could not be combined into any meaningful solution. Fragments of quantum computing modules, partially damaged communication arrays, bioadaptive material samples, and energy transfer components, each piece deliberately chosen to be incompatible. Most species would have surrendered immediately. Aisha O'Cake's eyes lit up like a child presented with the most fascinating puzzle in the universe. "This isn't a limitation," she murmured, spreading the components across the analysis table. "This is an invitation." The challenge arena was a marvel of alien engineering, a vast chamber with holographic interfaces that could instantaneously model and destroy any prototype. Previous species had been reduced to technological dust, their most brilliant minds crushed by the complexity of the task. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura began what looked like an impossible deconstruction. His hands moved with a surgeon's precision, breaking down each component, analyzing its quantum-level properties. Belina Ramirez stood nearby, her linguistic background providing unexpected insights into the technological language of the components. "Look at the communication protocols," she said, pointing to a damaged quantum module. "These aren't just technical specifications. They're a form of communication we haven't fully understood." Captain Rodriguez watched, her military background providing a strategic overlay to their creative process. Dr. Marcus Chen monitored their psychological states, tracking how their collective creativity was pushing beyond known boundaries. What happened next was nothing short of technological sorcery. O'Cake didn't just try to rebuild a device. She began to see the components as a living system. The quantum computing module wasn't just a piece of technology. It was a potential language, a method of communication that transcended traditional computational boundaries. Nakamura's biomechanical expertise revealed unexpected material interactions. The incompatible components began to form symbiotic relationships that defied the Zorn's most advanced predictive models. Hours turned into days. The Zorn observation team watched in growing disbelief. This wasn't just problem-solving. This was a fundamental reimagining of technological potential. By the third day, they had created something entirely unexpected. Not a weapon, not a communication device, but a hybrid system that could adapt, learn, and transform itself in real time. It was part computer, part living organism, part communication network. "We're not trying to solve your challenge," O'Cake said to the observation systems. "We're trying to understand the language of possibility." The device they created was a philosophical statement as much as a technological marvel. It didn't just work, it evolved. Each interaction changed its fundamental structure, creating new possibilities with every moment of engagement. Vornak, the Zorn Grand Arbiter, felt something unprecedented. Fear, respect. The human approach was so fundamentally alien that it challenged the very concept of technological development. They hadn't just broken the rules of the challenge. They had revealed that the rules themselves were an illusion. The technological improvisation challenge became a turning point. It wasn't just about what humans could build. It was about how humans saw potential itself, not as a fixed concept, but as a constantly evolving dialogue between imagination and reality. In that moment, The Zorn Confederation understood a terrifying truth. Humans weren't just another species to be evaluated. They were a force of nature waiting to be unleashed. The sixth trial was nothing short of a psychological nightmare, a multi-layered challenge designed to systematically exploit every potential weakness in the human team. Unlike previous challenges that tested physical or technological capabilities, this was a pure test of psychological resilience. The arena was a living psychological construct, a space that could instantaneously generate personalized scenarios drawn from the deepest, most intimate memories of each team member. Holographic projections that weren't just visual, they were sensory, emotional, almost cellular in their ability to recreate traumatic experiences. For Elena Rodriguez, it manifested as a recreation of her most devastating military mission, a failed rescue operation where she had lost her entire unit. The holographic environment reconstructed every painful detail with surgical precision. The smell of burning equipment, the echoes of dying comrades, the soul-crushing weight of survivors' guilt. Most commanders would have been paralyzed. Rodriguez analyzed the construct. Dr. Marcus Chen watched her psychological response with scientific fascination. This wasn't just about individual resilience, it was about collective psychological adaptation. Aisha Okik faced her own nightmare, a quantum computational scenario where her most brilliant theoretical work was systematically dismantled, her entire intellectual identity deconstructed in real time. Equations she had developed were shown to be fundamentally flawed, her life's work reduced to meaningless symbols. Instead of breaking, she began to see the deconstruction as an opportunity for new understanding. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura confronted a scenario that attacked his deepest professional fears, a complete failure of biomechanical integration, where every medical innovation he had developed resulted in catastrophic patient outcomes. Holographic patients died in increasingly horrific ways, each death a testament to his perceived incompetence. He didn't just endure. He began to analyze the psychological architecture of the challenge itself. Elena Ramirez's challenge was perhaps the most insidious. Her linguistic expertise was turned against her, communication systems that progressively made her unable to express complex thoughts, reducing her to fragmented, meaningless utterances. Language itself became a prison. She discovered communication patterns within the breakdown. The Zorn observation team watched in growing confusion. This wasn't just psychological testing. It was a complex dialogue about the nature of human resilience. What made humans extraordinary wasn't their ability to resist psychological pressure. It was their capacity to transform that pressure into understanding. Rodriguez recognized the challenge's true nature first. This isn't about breaking us. She communicated to her team through a complex series of micro-expressions and neural synchronization. This is about showing us who we are. Each team member began to see their personal challenge as part of a larger collective experience. Their individual traumas became a source of collective strength. Where other species would have fragmented, they found unity. Chen's psychological monitoring revealed something unprecedented. Their neural synchronization wasn't just maintaining stability, it was actively evolving. Each psychological assault became a learning experience, a way of understanding deeper levels of human potential. By the challenge's midpoint, they were no longer just surviving. They were transforming the very concept of psychological resilience. The Zorn Grand Arbiter Vornak felt something close to existential dread. These humans weren't just resisting psychological breakdown. They were rewriting the fundamental understanding of consciousness itself. As the final stages of the psychological warfare challenge approached, it became clear that this was more than a test. It was a revelation. Humanity wasn't just another species to be categorized. They were a living, evolving system of infinite potential. The final trial was a civilization-level challenge that defied conventional understanding. It wasn't just a test of individual capabilities or even team dynamics. It was a comprehensive assessment of humanity's potential to solve complex, multidimensional problems that threatened entire galactic systems. The arena was a living, breathing simulation of an impending cosmic catastrophe. Multiple star systems hung in delicate balance, each threatened by a complex web of environmental, technological, and sociopolitical challenges. Previous species had been utterly overwhelmed by the sheer complexity of the scenario. The human team approached it with a calm that bewildered the Zorn observers. Captain Alina Rodriguez stood at the center of a holographic projection that represented the entire challenge space. Millions of variables shifted in real time: climate disruptions, technological failures, political tensions, resource depletion. It was a problem so complex that most species would have been paralyzed before even beginning. "We're not solving individual problems," Rodriguez communicated to her team through their synchronized neural interface. "We're understanding the entire system." Dr. Marcus Chen's psychological monitoring revealed something extraordinary. The team wasn't just analyzing the challenge. They were becoming part of its living system. Their collective consciousness began to interact with the simulation in ways that defied traditional problem-solving approaches. Aisha O'Keefe's quantum computational skills transformed the technological challenges. Where other species would have approached each technological failure as a separate issue, she saw them as interconnected language systems. Her approach wasn't about fixing individual components. It was about understanding their collective communication. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura brought a biomechanical perspective that was both scientific and almost philosophical. He didn't just see technological and environmental challenges as separate problems. He understood them as living, evolving systems with their own internal logic. Alina Ramirez's linguistic expertise became crucial. She began to decode the communication patterns between different system failures, revealing hidden connections that no other species had ever perceived. As hours turned into days, the human team did something unprecedented. They weren't just solving the challenge, they were reimagining the entire concept of problem-solving. The Zorn observation systems struggled to track their approach. It wasn't linear. It wasn't even three-dimensional. The humans were solving the challenge by becoming part of its living system, their collective consciousness dancing with the simulation's complexity. Vornak, the Zorn Grand Arbiter, watched in growing astonishment. This wasn't just problem-solving. This was a fundamental reimagining of intelligence itself. By the challenge's final stages, the human team had not only stabilized the multiple star systems, but had created pathways for sustainable development that went beyond any previous galactic understanding. They didn't just solve immediate crises, they created adaptive systems that could evolve and respond to future challenges. Their solution was a living blueprint, part technological innovation, part sociological insight, part philosophical statement. As the final moments of the challenge approached, Rodriguez turned to the observation systems. Her message was clear. This wasn't about proving superiority. This was about demonstrating a new way of understanding potential. The cosmic simulation stabilized, but that was almost incidental. What truly happened was a profound demonstration of human capability, a species that didn't just solve problems, but transformed the very concept of problem-solving. The Zorn Confederation realized a terrifying truth in that moment. Humanity wasn't just another species to be evaluated. They were a force of nature waiting to be understood. The aftermath of the trials was not a celebration, but a fundamental recalibration of galactic understanding. In the vast crystalline chambers of the Zorn Confederation's central governance complex, Grand Arbiter Vornak presented the findings. The holographic displays were not mere recordings. They were living representations of humanity's journey through the trials, each moment vibrating with a complexity that challenged everything the Confederation believed about intelligent life. Humans are not like any species we have encountered. Vornak's resonant communication translated across multiple dimensional frequencies. They do not conform. They do not adapt. They transform. The assembled representatives of the Galactic Confederation represented hundreds of advanced civilizations, methane-breathing diplomats from the Hybrid Collective, energy state beings from the Luminarian networks, crystalline intelligences, quantum-entangled collectives. Each had their own method of evaluation, their own understanding of potential. Humanity broke every single one of their models. Captain Alina Rodriguez and her team were not presented as conquering heroes. They were something more nuanced, living demonstrations of a fundamental truth about intelligence and potential. Dr. Marcus Chen's psychological analysis became a cornerstone of a new galactic understanding.